In this connection, those constituents of the 12 thoughts, which in themselves are ethically neutral, are to be understood as unchanged in the connotation assigned them in connection with good thoughts. There being for bad thoughts no other sphere of existence save the sensuous universe, this is to be understood throughout. Ditthagata sampayatam. With Rasaramanim va is inadvertently omitted in the printed text. See following note. Concentration of mind is essential to the higher life of Buddhism. Nevertheless, so far is it from constituting excellence, that it is also an essential to effective evil-doing. If the mind be undistracted, says Buddhaghosa, the murderer's knife does not miss, the theft does not miscarry, and by a mind of single intent evil conduct is carried out. The Hebrew idiom rendered by the heart being set, to do good or evil. Hate and malice do not find a place among the factors of bad thoughts till we come to the last 4 types of bad thoughts. Whereas these are accompanied by melancholy, the subject of the first and the following 3 types of thought is a cheerful sinner. Joy, ease, happiness, were held to be incompatible with hate. Vipassana has been erroneously included in the text. Moral insight was as incompatible with immoral thoughts to the Buddhist as it was to Socrates and Plato. Hence also, wisdom and mindfulness are excluded, as well as faith. The Sai rules that the followers of heretical dogmas and mere opinion can have but a spurious faith in their teachers, can only be mindful of bad thoughts, and can only cultivate deceit and delusion. Nor can there possibly be that 6-fold efficiency of sense and thought which is concomitant with good thoughts. ASL. Kasala in the text is, of course, a slip. There are in all these bad thoughts 10, whatever other, states. Desire, resolve, attention, conceit, envy, meanness, stolidity, torpor, excitement, worry. See above. Michadati is defined in the Sai as ayathavadasanam, seeing things as they are not. 62 kinds of this perverted vision, or ill-grounded speculation, are distinguished in the Brahmajala Sutta, all of them being theories of existence, and are alluded to by the commentator. Ehis Davids, American Lectures, p. ASQ. Because of the difficulty of getting out of it, as out of a grass, forest, or mountain jungle. Because of the danger and fearsomeness of indulging in such opinions, as of a desert beset with robbers and snakes, barren of water or food. Buddhaghosa does not derive this term from visukam, but from visu ka ekam equals antithetically constituted, i.e. to samadati. The disorder and struggle through some being annihilationists, some eternalists, etc. C. The obsession by some object of thought, like the grip of a crocodile. The text of the Sai reads patitaho for patigaho. K, however, reads patigaho. I.e. towards the fallacious opinion of permanence, etc. Titiyatanam. It is impossible to get an English equivalent for this metaphor, which literally means only a standing place, but which is usually, in its first intention, associated with a shallow river strand or seashore, and, in its second, with sectarian speculative beliefs and the teaching of them. Buddhaghosa himself gives an alternative connotation, where the foolish, in the course of their gyrations, cross over the region or home of sectarians. The use of the term in M.I. Na has here dropped out of the printed text. Sambodho. On ignorance as a flood and as a bond, see below, a. Whereas the mark of lust is the seizing on an object in idea. It is the essence of dullness to cover up the real nature of that object, with the result that the attention devoted to it is of a superficial nature. ASL. Namely, lust, and dullness. The sigh instances the case of a young man who, being refused the hand of the daughter of some false doctrinaire on the ground of his being of a different communion, is prompted by his affections to frequent the church of the girl's people and to adopt their views, thus gaining his reward. Somanasandrium, bracketed in the text, must, of course, be included. The sigh instances the frame of mind of those who are indulging in worldly pleasures, such as public sports and dances, and at village festivals. Cf. Dialogues of the Buddha, I. It is difficult to interpret the concisely and obscurely worded double illustration given in the sigh. Of this type of thought, the same circumstances are supposed as in the third thought, with the added low-class delights of horseplay and vulgar curiosity. Cf. A. The sigh gives no illustrations of this or the three preceding types of thought. Patigo, used to describe do so, and again in connection with sense stimulation, as reaction. Vyapati, vyapajana. N. Here the comment is pakatibhava vijahan athena equals throwing off a normal state. Like gruel that has gone bad. Morris thinks candidatum is the right spelling. I incline to hold that the lectio difficilior is more likely to be correct. The sigh, in 4 passages spells with kk. K, by an oversight, has candidatum in the present passage, but kk in. Asuropo. Ephas, according to the sigh. To the broken utterance of a man in a rage. It is not a little curious that such constituents as self-collectedness, quiet, and balance should not be found incompatible with hate as described above. Concentration is less incompatible, and it must be remembered that all 3 states are described in the same terms. Hence, if one stands, the others cannot fall. But see under thoughts X and XH. Namely, doso and moho. Buddhaghosa says on this passage, inasmuch as this weak form of thought has only the capacity of keeping going, or persisting, none of the other features of self-collectedness are here applied to it. It is clear, therefore, that the p after tt in the text is a mistake. And k, concentration, it will be noticed, as well as quiet and balance, are entirely omitted. It is tempting to render vicikiccha by doubt. It would not be incorrect to do so. The dual state of mind, which is the etymological basis of Tao Bt, is shown in 2 of the terms selected to describe the word. Again, the objects of vicikiccha, as given in, are those to which the term doubt, in its ethico-religious sense, might well be applied. But there are features in which the Buddhist attitude of vicikiccha does not coincide with doubt as usually understood in the West. Doubt is the contrary of belief, confidence, or faith. Now, the approximate equivalents of the latter, saddha and paradu, are not alluded to in the answer, as they might be, for the purpose of contrast. Again, though this by itself is also no adequate ground for not matching the 2 terms in question, the etymology of the words is very different. There is nothing of the dual, divided state of mind in the structure of vicikiccha as there is in that of doubt. Cikit is the desiderative or frequentative of cit, to think. Vi, the prefix, indicating either intensive or distracted thinking. Thus, the etymology of the Indian word lays stress on the dynamic rather than the static, on the stress of intellection rather than the suspense of inconclusiveness. When the term recurs, Buddhaghosa refers it to kiccho, to the fatigue incurred through inability to come to a decision, a position nearer, psychologically, to perplexity, than to doubt. It is quite true that, on etymological ground, neither is canker a match for our term, doubt. Kanks is to desire. The word would seem to give the emotional and volitional complement of the intellectual state implied in vicikiccha. The longing to escape into certainty and decision attendant on the anxious thinking. Canker, however, is not one of any important category of ethical terms, as is vicikiccha. Besides, its secondary meaning, namely, of a matter sub judice, or of the state of mind connected therewith, seems to have superseded the primary meaning, which is retained in a kankarti. Hence, it can be fairly well rendered by doubt. I do not, then, pretend that perplexity is etymologically the equivalent of vicikiccha, but I use it to guard against a too facile assimilation of the latter to the implications of doubt, as used by us, and to throw emphasis on the mortal coil and tangle of thought in one who, on whatever grounds, is skeptically disposed. Vimati, almost an exact parallel to vicikiccha, connoting as it does either intense or distraught mind action. Divalhukam, Divedapatho. Here we get to the etymological idea in our own doubt. The sigh has, for the one, to be swayed or shaken to and fro. For the other, as a path branching in two, this being an obstacle to attainment. Samsayo, the etymological equivalent of collapse. To succumb to one's inability to be persistently carrying on such problems as, is this permanent or impermanent? Etc. Says the Sai. Asapana, parasapana. According to the Sai, these mean, respectively, to relinquish an object of thought through inability to come to a decision, and to slip about on all sides from inability to plunge in. ASL. Aparayogana, employed to describe moho. C. I should not have hesitated to adopt, for tamhitatam, chamhitatan, the alternate reading in the Sai. Were it not that the latter paraphrases the term by saying, the meaning is a condition of denseness. For when perplexity arises, one makes one's mind stiff. K. Also reads tamhitatam. Both terms, however, though opposed in connotation, are derived from the root stam, to prop. And both are used to describe the gaseous element, which, though it is vacillating, holds solids apart. See below. There is the further comment that, in respect of certainty, inability to carry on the idea in the mind is meant. Vicikiccha, then, though it implies active racking of the brain, impedes progress in effective thinking, and results in a mental condition akin to the denseness and aparayogana of moho. Manavilako. When perplexity arises, seizing the object of thought, it scratches the mind, as it were. When the term is used to describe kakukam, or worry, it is illustrated in the Sai. By the scaling of a copper pot with an awl. ASL. See note on P. Namely, moho. On the omission of balanced below n. Yam sitasa udakan avupasamo, sataso vikhepo, bantatam citasa, idem vukati eudican. It seems clear that, whether or no eudican can elsewhere be rendered by terms indicative of a puffed-up state of mind. See Ehis Davids, Buddhism, p. Warren, Buddhism in Translations, p. Newman, Die Eden, etc. Passam. The specific meaning in this connection is the antithesis of vupasamo, and the equivalent of vikhepo. Both of which are expressions about the meaning of which there is little or no uncertainty. In Sanskrit, audatya is only found twice in later works, one of them Buddhist, and there means wrestling's a word used by ourselves for certain agitated, perfervid mental states. That the term should be yoked with kakakam in the Nivaranas. C. And the cognate meaning in another allied pair, th mamad dh am, goes far to rob it of implications of vanity or self-righteousness. Opening parenthesis. In Dialogues of the Buddha, I. The former pair are rendered, flurry and worry. Closing parenthesis. Buddhaghosa gives little help. But he distinguishes udakam, as a struggling over one object of thought, from perplexity as a struggling over divers objects of thought. The Buddhists were apparently seeking for terms to describe a state of mind antithetical to that conveyed by the designation thinamidam, stolidity and torpor. In the latter, there is excessive stability, the immobility not of a finely adjusted balance of faculties and values, but of an inert mass. In the former there is a want of equilibrium and adjustment. From some cause or another the individual is stirred up, agitated, fussed. In American idiom, rattled. Single quote. What I have rendered, turmoil, Buddhaghosa calls Vabanti Bhavo, Bantiana Bantaganadanam Via. Whatever the exact meaning of udakam may be, there is enough to show that it is in great part antithetical to some of the other constituents enumerated under the bad thought in question, at least, when these are taken in their full intention. I refer to the approximately synonymous group. Self-collectedness, concentration, quiet, and balance. The last, indeed, is a contradiction in terms to the phrase which describes udakam as sataso vikhepo. The text actually omits it, but this is through mere inadvertence. It is given in K. And the Psi explicitly states that there are 28 constituents enumerated, 14 of them being described in terms of one or other of the other 14. Opening parenthesis. If the reader will compare with the corresponding descriptions given in, he will prove this to be correct. Closing parenthesis. Nor is there a word to comment on, or explain away any apparent incongruity in the inclusion. There is only a short discussion, alluded to already, on the relation of udakam and vicikiccha. Thoughts 11 and 12. As departing from the symmetrical procedure of I to IX, are said to be miscellaneous items, and to be concerned with persistent attending to the idea. And just as, if a round gem and a tetragonal gem be sent rolling down an inclined plane, the former's motion is uniform, while that of the latter is from one position of rest to another, so vicikiccha connotes a continual working of thought, while udakam works on one given basis at a time. There being, then, as it would appear, this fairly close analogy between perplexity and excitement, it is fair to assume that self-collectedness and its synonyms are to be understood in Thought 12 as present in the feeble degree to which they, or at least the first of them, is present in Thought 11. The compilers were thus between two fires as to their logic. Either a vikhepo must go to admit of the use of vikhepo, in which case the synonyms of a vikhepo must go too, or it and its synonyms must be retained with a highly attenuated import. Possibly the subject was conceived as agitated on some one point only, but calm as to things in general.